On the IG report, there are veterans of the organization no doubt looking forward to it because they know it will clear them, their names, and their behavior as government employees. What if the Attorney General comes out and says we're going to diminish the report? I can't change it, but I can talk it down. I can take a notch out of it. Number two, the matter of the Strzok and Page, the two people whose story we have heard the president in flowery terms kind of relitigate at his rallies.
So, look, we've all been worried about this attorney general and his consistent ability to ignore facts. If it's true, if this reporting is true, that he is going to side against his own inspector general and side with the president, he will again be choosing to ignore a neutral fact finder and come up with his own set of alternative truth. The problem with that is that's not what the attorney general is supposed to do. And in fact, he will disgrace his office if he chooses to ignore the facts developed by his own inspector general. And I have to tell you, Brian, the only person more pleased tonight that the attorney general of the United States might be at odds with his own department, other than the president of the United States, is the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. There could not be a more destructive attorney general than if Vladimir Putin had appointed Barr himself. With regard to Lisa Page, the FBI lawyer, look, she exercised incredibly poor judgment. We all know the facts. She used FBI devices to text with Peter Strzok, the FBI senior official that she was having an affair with. They texted personal political opinions. They should not have done that. Strzok was fired. Lisa Page left the FBI. But what we're seeing right now is the president choosing to attack this person who was a public servant, decided to make this her career, and attack her simply because she was doing her job. And if the IG report comes out and says they did nothing wrong, we would not be in a different place today with a special counsel and all that he found if Lisa Page was or was not in the mix. If that's the case, Trump needs to shut that down. But he's going to continue to attack this woman simply because she did her job.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.